So if it doesn't reduce emissions, as they said on Friday, if they've been caught out by the facts, why on earth are they doing it?
It's a very good question. And to me, it's government greenwashing. It's claiming an environmental benefit, which absolutely isn't there. In fact, the opposite is there. So I guess it's virtue signalling. I guess it's looking for cheap green votes. I can't really explain it.
Give us a sense of what this impact will mean on households and businesses. I'm interested, obviously, both in terms of cost to consumers, but also energy reliability.
Well, it's going to unfortunately have negative effect on both. So it's going to drive cost up, unavoidably, the simple economics of supply and demand. So the government is forcing a reduction of supply. Demand will be there and it won't be able to be met. The costs, there's a lot of fixed costs for a large network like the gas network, and that will eventually be spread over less and less people until the cost becomes unsustainable, which I assume is all part of the strategy. Reliability, on the other hand, as we know, the electricity grid in Victoria is already struggling to cope with demand at the peak. And turning off more gas, half of the energy to Victorian homes is gas. So it's completely impossible to turn off all gas supply. But at the margin, stopping people from using gas on new homes will drive greater demand on the electricity grid, and it will burn more brown coal.
You made the point, I saw a statement where you excoriated the government on Friday that you issued, and making the point, pulling the minister up, the Environment Minister announced his policy, pulling her up with her claim, or at least the inference, that the 17% she quotes about gas emissions in the state isn't the truth when it comes to residential gas, is it?
Absolutely. It's a very devious statistic, because residential gas in Victoria accounts for less than 2% of all emissions. And this policy is purely targeting residential use of gas. So they're focusing on absolutely the wrong thing, but they will cause enormous pain. You asked me about the impact on households. Well, a lot of households have someone who works in the HVAC industry or the plumbing industry, tradesmen, and they will be impacted by this disruptive and precipitous action, which has happened. The master plumbers came out and said they're very disappointed. There's been no proper consultation, and plumbers will no longer be able to do a lot of the work that they currently do in terms of gas fittings. There's no provision for retraining them. That, of course, would take years anyway.
I'm conscious too, John, we're talking about only this change applying to newly built homes. We know most of those newly built house and land package type properties are the entry level for families. This will mean those with the lower incomes or family commitments will now have to cop much higher prices to heat their homes and cool their homes than those who are buying multi-million-dollar existing properties that can keep using their gas.
Absolutely. And so we were talking to some of our builder customers today, and they were saying that it will be tens of thousands of dollars extra per house, even at the base level, if everyone's required to get whole-of-home reverse cycle air conditioning. That's the cost to build the house, and then, as you said, the cost to keep the house comfortable and to maintain a healthy living environment will be a lot more.
Yeah, those figures on the screen there come from Choice, and they make it very clear that gas is a cheaper alternative for families in particular, people on low incomes, older Australians who can't turn their heaters on. We know that story pretty well. What did you make of the fact that on Friday, Chris Minns in New South Wales was asked the question, sat on the fence, refused to rule out going down the path that Andrews has set? Well, today he's had a reckoning, I suspect, over the weekend. He's ruled out copying the Victorian model. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's just a much more pragmatic and sensible and well-informed approach that is being taken in New South Wales. And it's consistent with the science, whereas the Andrews government in Victoria is acting in total contravention of all the science and the logic.
All right, if you had the ear of Daniel Andrews tonight, what would your message be?
I would say, Premier Andrews, moderate this madness. Stop exporting Australian manufacturing jobs to China. Stop imposing additional cost on your population for negative environmental benefit, because that's what it is. Stop the greenwashing and let's have a pragmatic approach to a transition away from all fossil fuels, including gas. Embrace the renewable gas revolution, which is happening in the rest of the world, with both biomethane and hydrogen, completely emissions neutral or emissions negative gas options, which can utilise the existing infrastructure, give people the heating, the cooling, the cooking that they are used to, and reduce the cost and reduce emissions. There are alternatives to what you are doing, and I would encourage you to do them.
Well, John Seeley, at a time when a lot of business leaders cower under the desk at Dan Andrews and other Labor leaders and don't speak up and defend their patch, all credit to you for being so vocal in your comments. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us.